Hello and welcome to the Wednesday check-in here on Landy's Crypto Corner. Today is January 15th, 2025. 5 days to go until we have a new president here in the United States. And I've baited you in with a trend line. Well, you're going to see this trend line a lot anyway across many charts, especially if this Thursday candle, it's still Wednesday for me, but the Thursday candle for Bitcoin is open. And, Bitcoin is in a position where it has set a low since we last spoke. It met the criteria that we talked about on Monday. And I believe on, Tuesday, it is when it did close above and set this low. Wednesday, we got continuation back up to one of our zones of interest, or just shy of one of our zones of interest there, to $101,000, with the high coming in at $100,716. So, approaching the overhead resistance that I had mentioned between 101 and 104, after coming off of the bottom side of the support, right at the edge where we got a $300 front run of our 88,700 kind of line in the sand for the support down below here. And in this case, what do I have here? I'm not sure what this fit pull is from. I was just messing around. So, we've got, we've still got a potentially bearish setup. Nice up candle, looks bullish, nearly coming up to the overhead resistance directly. And just for reference of why I have this area picked out, it's all the close opens over here as resistance to the wick high from the 5th of December. And that was at $104,000. And, granted, this is slightly above $100,000 at 101. Slightly above 101 at 101, 174.99. So, this area getting front run, not particularly unexpected. We talked about this exact scenario on Monday on a low being set here. So there is, of course, this downtrend line that many are going to be tracking. And many are going to be tracking either a triangle, or they're going to be drawing all kinds of patterns like a falling channel, a triangle, all kinds of stuff, right? Either way, the structure as it stands right now is still in bearish territory, right? And you might remember from Monday what I said is that if it does set a low here, we need to see it close back above this wick high from the January 7th candle. This is coming in at 102,735. And if it doesn't do that, what we're going to look for is at minimum a lower high or a swing lower high. So a lower high close or a swing lower high. And in this case, we still have to await some lower term timeframes on the daily to see if there's still the possibility of continuation into test this green zone overhead between around 101 to 104 and attempt to take this high. Either way, what we're looking for from here is higher low equal low structure no matter what, right, on the daily and on a closing basis. If this does result in a lower high, we have to be aware of the close down here at 97,550 or so, down to the actual wick low thus far of this kind of downtrending structure that's going on here with the deviation higher high. And that's coming in at that $89,000 level, just $300 above, or around $300 above the bottom side of our red box here, which is this swing low of this higher low structure, before moving up and flipping this red box area into support. This maintained as support with some grabs for liquidity a couple times in it. We've had 3 very recent ones, and this downtrend, the deviation, the retest of this area, and then when putting in the low, the very deep spike into that area from Monday. Now, what I will say is I don't, just like Monday, nothing has really changed from what we talked about. Bitcoin is still in a range. And we just still need to see some higher low structure that can break the downtrend now. We do have a higher high. I'll be honest, it would actually look structurally better for me in some lower term time frames if we did see a lower high on a swing is fine. But even if it's a lower high and a close, for Bitcoin to try and put in a higher low. Now, you might remember that the criteria to set this low was closing above $96,000. That's exactly what Tuesday's candle did. So let's see where things are at in terms of the outlook for some other things that we've talked about, right? We've got trend. We've got our support and resistance that we've discussed. What about volatility? Well, I'd mentioned that volatility, we did get a slight bit of expansion off of this. We went from expansion to a sideways compressive range to the upside. We spiked the top between the upper second and upper third standard deviation away from the basis band here, which is a 20 simple moving average, and then dumped back down to the lower bands, went sideways, rejected the midline at the 20 simple, and then started to walk the bands on that kind of a little bit more expansive posture to the downside. But until we closed below, for instance, the lower second, we weren't looking for too much further into this downside support area between $88,700 and $92,000. Now we then spiked the top side. So we ran from one side of the bands to the other in terms of volatility between support and overhead resistance. And then we got a little bit of a range look on the bands and kind of back into a more compressive price range for volatility. Now, if we do see closes back above $101,000, we, as bulls, we would want to see closes above 101,500 to kick off that expansion back to this higher high structure. And then, of course, close above it. That would look really good. And then from there, we're looking for higher low, equal low structure, right? As it relates to this low on a close and the wick low as kind of a range. Now, if we did see that, a close above the upper second inside of this overhead resistance, that would be the next logical target, somewhere around 102,500 to that 102,800, we'll call it. Above there, we have volatility at the upper third standard deviation lining up with $104,000. If we did see any kind of closes out there and Bitcoin hasn't already moved up to test further up, then I would be looking for it to try at minimum on a swing or on continuation of trend to the upside or continuation of the lower term time frame uptrend. If it were to occur, then I'd be looking at 106 to 108. We've beat this horse to death. That would be kicking off volatility expansion on the daily to the upside. And we would be looking above 108. I would take it $2,000 increments to $112,000. I've shown the fib plenty of times. There's a Fibonacci level at around $111,000. So it kind of fits right in and around that area as confluence. So I'd be talking, above 108 to 110, 110 to 112. And then as volatility continues to kick up, then we look to 115 and then we go in $5,000 increments, 115 to 120, 125 to 130, essentially, where we have the more macro fib that I showed on what was it? Monday. Yeah. Sorry. It's been a long day. And that's where, we have about 128,000 or slightly above there. We have the 1414 Fibonacci extension from the bear market pull from high to low of the bull to the bottom of the bear. And let me actually look. Do I have, maybe my fib just got moved because I was moving the chart around. Maybe I misclicked it. So let's go ahead and just pull that bear market fib extension here. So from the bull high to the bear low. And let's go back to the daily real quick so that we can just kind of reiterate that. And again, Bitcoin is kind of trapped in between some fib levels of interest, right? We've got something doesn't look right here. What is, that's what's wrong. Log scale, which is what I prefer to use. And in this case, we've got the 1272 coming in at that 103. So we're kind of bracketed between some fib levels that I've shown in the past. We've got the perfect tap on that 1.168 Fibonacci level to the downside, bottom side of our red zone here for our support. And then above the top side here, we've got the 1272. And then much further up here, we have the 1414, which is 41.4% above the prior cycle high when taking that fib at $69,000 as the top side or the one spot down to the zero read or 0%, where the low of the bear market came in at $15,500 here on spot. So we get this $128,000 level. That lines up with a lot of volatility levels of confluence that I've shown many, many times. So now, in addition to that, we can take a look at RSI. We are, in an area where I think we're good on some bear drives. Yeah, so we're good. Nothing really too interesting here. Bitcoin did come up, and in the process of moving up in that candle when it spiked up, nearly hit the bullish control zone. Now this is updated. Bullish control zone is going to be 101.664, so that would put it right into our overhead resistance, and then we have to watch it closely. We need to see it beat out on RSI and on a closing high above that 102.735. So something to keep an eye on. We also did get our turn up in a regular stochastic momentum indicator, where we have 93,000, nearly 93,100 as the momentum pivot to the downside. So if we did see price close below there, then that would turn this back down, at least an initial cross back down. This is a regular Stoch, not a Stoch RSI. Stoch RSI measures the velocity of RSI. We're already using an RSI. We don't need to reference a Stoch RSI. So instead, we're just referencing a regular stochastic momentum indicator, which is measuring close over close price momentum, which means that we can, and this is usually where you're going to see me draw on trendline regressions. You'll see that guys like Eric Crown do this a lot, and it's because it's based on close over close price momentum. So I think it's more viable to play divergences here and trendline regressions here than on the price chart. That's just me. Other people have different styles, and you do what works for you, right? For your confluences. In this case, you can see that this is where I would draw a bit of a triangle, right? So in this case, I'm looking at this being a pretty good pivot. I want to see some continuation in lower term time frames on the daily. If we don't see that, and it does set like a lower high and a close or a lower high and a swing between now and Friday when I talk to you again, then we're looking for higher low equal low structure somewhere around the bottom side supports. And I wouldn't necessarily want to see stochastic turn down. So maybe if it just does like a daily crawl sideways with a swing high to swing higher low, that would look good. We'll just have to gauge things as price develops. Now, in some of the lower term timeframes, like the 12-hour, you can see that the 12-hour is kind of right in this area for trend lines. For the trend line people in the crowd, this is now something that we don't have this daily trend line regression isn't going to work here, but we do have stochastic pointed straight up to the upside here. And I've mentioned this a lot. Typically we will see this, this doesn't always hold true, but typically we will see the biggest moves in the overbought and oversold levels. And for a stochastic, it can stay in the overbought for an extended period of time. It can stay in the oversold for an extended period of time. And the funny thing is, it didn't even get to oversold on the 12-hour, even with the moves back to support and the repeated tests. So this still looks good, but I think that the 4 hours probably getting ready to turn down. And in fact, it's got an initial cross to the downside here, 100,500 basically to turn this back up and keep it in the overbought zone here. And just for reference, when I say usually we see the biggest moves once stochastic is in the overbought or oversold. And again, it doesn't always hold true, but let's go ahead and throw a horizontal on here. If I can pick the right tool, let's do, horizontal. Man, it's going to be one of those days, huh? A vertical line tool here. And you can see that, even though it was, overbought here, when it entered the overbought zone for both the K and the D read for a stochastic momentum indicator, Bitcoin was going sideways and still took another leg up because it was getting expansion on the 4-hour. We are starting to see the residual expansion, so bands expanding past price. And actually, we just kind of walked up the upper first and we're grinding up against that upper second. You can see that that's right at the bottom side of that overhead resistance there at about 101, 100 currently. If Bitcoin were to turn this candle green, it would likely be right in that resistance around that 101, 175. And I'd be looking for nice higher low structure, right? That's quite frankly what I'm looking for on the 4-hour from here. We did get some nice swing higher low structure in this consolidation, swing high to swing higher low as it relates to this 4-hour low down here. So, we'd be looking for this to, preferably for those that play volatility levels, wherever the upper first is, you want to see that maintained down to the basis band, right? And the basis band's coming right in there where we needed to see price break to set the daily low. And that's, $96,000 essentially, right around $96,000, 95,862 to 96,150 essentially, where the basis band is coming in. If it's going to remain bullish and still in a position where now that the bands, are probably going to start outrunning price, especially if this next 4-hour candle closes red, then as long as it's above the upper first for volatility purposes, we'll likely see the upper second continue into the overhead resistance. And that would be an area of interest to the upside from a volatility perspective, as long as Bitcoin is closing the candles above the upper first, which is currently at like 98,500. So this will, of course, update probably $99,000 in the next close. And, we'll kind of gauge things from there. In terms of the potential for bearish divergence, we do see that, RSI in the 102,700 area where it put in the highs here on the 4-hour, was a pretty critical read. It wasn't like extreme. It wasn't like the 85 read up here, but it basically spiked into the 80, just slightly above there at 81, before dumping off all the way down to the bearish control zone. And then, of course, taking a trip sideways, rejecting the midline, then back into the bearish control zone. Now we're back in the bullish control zone. And if it puts in a lower high and the RSI is a lower high, it's fine. But if it does come up here and get above the 81 read while putting in a lower high, then we have some bearish divergence populating there, right? In this case, that would be the critical zone. And quite frankly, if it got above there, it would actually, in closing above there, would actually put it above that high. So I don't think there's a risk of that right now. So that's where, for this current move up, I want to see a higher low being built out as a good base, and preferably above around $95,000 to $96,000. Really doesn't matter. On a close, I'd like to see it above 96, so it's not just diving back into the area that it just broke out of to set the low. But, above 95, 96 looks fine. To try and maybe in the lower term time frames try to set a higher low. In terms of the hourly, if we were to go down to the hourly as it relates to the 4-hour in the bullish control zone, just be aware of a move all the way back to the bearish control zone for the hourly. Edge of the bearish control zone is going to be, what do you know, just shy of $96,000. They're at 95,860, and go figure, we have confluence at 95,862 on our chart already. Isn't that fun? And, this is also where the lower second on the hourly is. So, it's things do favor the bulls here. And I would say for this move to get some continuation into the overhead resistance, I want to see those closes now come in above that, $95,000 to $96,000, even on the lower term time frames, but especially on 4-hour closes. Hourlies can swing under there and kind of close around. They have hourlies have a little bit more room below. Obviously, it's in there's a higher low right here, so back below 98,600. then we're looking for, 97.5 at the top side here. If it drops this low at 96.4, then we're probably looking at this lower second where this currently is. It's likely going to be further up above there, but we'd be looking for this area and kind of line in the sand for the hourly is below 95,300. So again, I want to see closes above $95,000 to $96,000 on any move back down. And that's going to look pretty good if it does that, or if it just gets some nice continuation up and in, then we know what the criteria is. Closes above basically 101. We're looking for that higher high structure, 102.5 to 102. We'll call it 8, and then a test to 104. Now let's go up time frame. So above the daily to the 2-day. I just want to check on a few things. Yeah, this is kind of ranging activities for the 2-day. This is going to close with today's candle, and we have a lower low on a close, a lower high, higher low close with a lower low wick. So again, you remember when I was talking about this stuff on the weekly, when the weekly was coming off of its lower low structure of $49,000, and we got the lower low close but the higher low swing. All we needed to see was a downtrend break. That's going to remain the same. Closes above 102,735 now on the 2-day would break this particular downtrend with a higher low and a close, lower low wick. What do we need to see from there is higher low on a swing or higher low close, wherever it puts in a high next. Bullish structure as it stands right now based on the move up into this zone. Now, 2-day is setting up for a range, to be quite honest. Right there, just above 101, we have the upper first. Just above 104, we've got the upper second there, coming in at 105, kind of a little front run of the close open up here at 106. Above there, the upper third is basically at the current all-time high at 108, almost 400. To the downside, the basis band is at $98,000 essentially. We've got that $96,000 as a kind of mid-zone area of interest. And then, of course, below there, we have where the actual closing low is coming in at the lower first. You don't really want to see this dropped bulls. That's at 94,377. Why? Because then the volatility levels of interest for the 2-day are down to the next big support at 92, and then into our red zone there, where the lower second is coming in right around this low here at 90,600 or so. It's almost 700. So just be aware of the context here. And, there's not too much more to say. This is a great move back to the upside. I'm happy. It closed a low. It's moving up. It has the potential to either get that continuation to test that higher high structure or put in a lower high with some higher lows. It's all going to start on those lower term time frames, right? For the next 4-hour time frame, I want to see a higher low set and then another try for its current high if it doesn't get continuation from here, and then a beat above that to go test this higher high structure at that 102,735. And that's going to be it for me today. I look forward to speaking with everybody again on Friday. I hope that you've learned a lot during the Learn TA with Landy series that I'm doing over there with Peace Love Music and Deorganize and Bitcoin DB Live. So big shout out to them. Much love to them. And I will see you likely in the various Spaces events that I also attend. So if you have any questions about any of these videos, you can always ask me there if the conversation is appropriate. And I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, and evening, no matter where you are in the world. Please trade safe. And of course, as always, stay safe. And with all of that being said, Landy out.